What is going on, YouTube? Carter here with Edged Mindset. I think I need some sort of sound effect, right? Like, edge mindset, something like that. No? Maybe? I don't know. We're taking a look. I can tell this video is off to the races. This one is going to be an all-star video. I can see it now. So many views, so many likes. Oh boy. We're taking a look at Chris Reeve Knives, I guess. I don't know. Some of it's going to be this specific one. This is a large Inkosi. Cool knife. Glad I got it. Large Inkosi. So, yeah, some of it's going to be talking about this knife. We're going to do some specs and my thoughts on it. But really, a lot of what I'm going to be talking about is kind of Chris Reeve in general. And in fact, it may be possible, warning, that I may call this a Sebenza at some time in this video. So please, if I do, forgive me. I am so sorry. But I'll be honest. It's been a long time since I've had a Chris Reeve. I say that with every knife, but it's true with every knife. I took a long time off of knives. I was way into it, and then I kind of really backed out. So it's been a long time since I've been into Chris Reeve knives. And I'll be honest, when I pulled this out of the box and held it, for a second, I was like, wait, did I get a Sebenza by mistake? And then I'm like, oh, yeah, that's right. No, this has the other Troil, and it has the blah, blah, blah. A lot of his knives are very similar, especially the Sebenza, the old one, the 31s that are the new ones. The Umnumzon is a little bit different, but very, very similar overall in feel, materials, obviously fit and finish, features. A lot of them are very, very similar. And so, anyways, the point of this video is I want to talk a little bit about Chris Reeves. Are they still the leader in knife manufacturing? Are they as good as they used to be? Not really since Chris Reeve left. I don't mean that. I can't really speak to that. I'm not that knowledgeable. I just mean in terms of the industry, right? Industry's changed. The bar's been raised. Knives are better now. And speaking of which, man, I'm all over the place. Speaking of which, one of the complaints with Microtech now is that the price is harder to justify because they are no longer the leader of manufacturing, right? So Microtech used to be popular because they were doing things nobody else could do. Precision machining, building the mechanisms inside of the knives was something that nobody else could do to that level. It's not the case anymore. Manufacturing all around has gotten better. Machining has gotten more precise. It's easier and cheaper for people to get said machining, and it's easier and cheaper for people to outsource said machining. And I think a similar thing applies to Chris Reeve. Look, this is a beautiful knife, and it is done to perfection. There is not a hair out of place, so don't get me wrong. Chris Reeve still deserves the mantle of kind of manufacturing and finish perfection. It really does. But not to the degree it used to be. It used to be this was one of the only places to get a knife, a production knife like this. Like nobody else could manufacture to this standard, this precision, this clean. And it's just not quite the case anymore, at least not as much as it used to be. Like I said, I still think Chris Reeve is on the top of the pile in that respect. But there's a lot of makers out there who are really dang close and a lot cheaper with a lot of different designs, So I think there is a little bit of some demantling with Chris Reeve. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you guys are going to lambaste me in the comments and say, you're crazy. You're freaking wrong. Chris Reeve for life. Chris Reeve rocks, which is all true. Those things are true. This is a classic, right? This is Sebenza. So this is like a sleeper, right? The Chris Reeve, and this is where his genius with his designs come in. You see a Chris Reeve knife and you say, it's nice, kind of boring, right? You're like, stonewash blade, blasted titanium, simple, nothing really going on. It's kind of boring. However, it's been kind of boring to the same degree its entire career. And that's a good thing. It may sound bad. The way I said it sounds bad. But that's a good thing. This is as classy and elegant of a design and as appealing of a design as when it was first introduced. It's just good. It's good. And it's not the flashiest thing. It's not really a knife that you take out of your pocket and your non-knife friends are going to be like, oh my God, that's amazing. But it is, there's something about it. It's just nice. And it's kind of like, listen, I've got a lot of crazy overbuilt bazonkadonk knives. I love those. And to me, this is sushi, right? That's sushi. And this is the ginger. This is what cleanses my palate with those knives, right? When the bonkers knives no longer look bonkers and something crazy no longer scratches that itch. Get one of these, put these in my pocket, appreciate the elegance and the simple design and the perfection. And then, after I spend some time with something like an Inkosi, I can come back to my Fat Daddy, and this thing excites me again because it's like, oh yeah, this is crazy, right? Like you get used to knives. When I first opened this thing, I was like, this is insane. Like I could never carry this. It's like a brick. But then I started carrying it and I started using it and I kind of got used to this. And then when I opened this out of its box the other day, I almost thought I was going to break it. Like when I went to unlock it, I'm like, I'm just going to shoot this lock bar right off of this thing. It felt so delicate at the time compared to some of the other knives that I have. So, which is kind of a good testament to this one, right? Greg Medford kind of says these knives are meant to be used with like gloves, in hard use situations. And it's absolutely true. You would not be able to use this with gloves. Not only would it be difficult to manipulate the controls, but gloves make it a lot harder to know how hard you're pressing on things, harder to get into these crevices. So that's a little bit of a testament to Greg, if you want to take it as that, to say, yes, it does fulfill that need, because I would not want to use this knife in gloves. It would be difficult. Especially to close it. I mean, I could probably open it, but closing it would be a little more difficult. So, Chris Reeve. Yes, back to Chris Reeve. That is the point of this video, not Medford. Chris Reeve. So, why is Chris Reeve so good? Materials, finish. Look at the stonewashing. Nobody else does stonewashing like this, especially since it's all dirty and you can't even see it. Like how I didn't even use the supplied Chris Reeve microfiber. I used my own. The stonewashing on here is like nobody else's. It's a very fine, almost scratchy stonewash. And you can tell they've got all this dialed in, right? They've got their media supplier for their stonewashing. They know exactly what media to use. They know how long to leave it in to get this exact finish. And every time you buy a stonewash finish Chris Reeve knife, it's going to look like this. Just the same, consistent and perfect, not a hair out of place. Another thing that I really like about Chris Reeve is they do sandblasting on their scales and not bead blasting. Bead blasting, in my opinion, comes across as kind of cheap. Sandblasting, you get this grittier, darker kind of tone to it, and it looks really, really good. Really, really good. So let's just talk about some features. This one has the ball. It has the ball. It has the ceramic ball, the large ceramic ball, and it acts as both the detent for when the knife closes. By the way, not a very strong detent. As I say that, I can't flick it open. I was doing it yesterday, so scratch that, rewind, cut that out. Pretty good detent. Yesterday when I had this, it was opening pretty easily, but not so much now. Anyways. So it acts as the detent, but then it also acts as the lock interface. So the ceramic ball is what interfaces with the back of this lock here. And if you can see that over on this side, you can see that kind of dark line. That is where that ball is rolling onto that lock face. Now, I believe the first knife to do that was the Umnumzan. And then I believe this was the second one to do that. And now I think all Chris Reeve knives have moved to this lock interface from the old just standard titanium to metal. I'm pretty sure that the Sebenza 31 has that lock interface as well. Why would you do that? Well, longevity, right? So one of the problems with titanium locks, other than, well, two problems with titanium locks directly interfacing with steel. One, titanium is sticky and soft, and so you get lock stick. Now, there's a couple ways to deal with that. You can carbonize. Eventually, it'll kind of break in once it stops pushing on it super hard. But the other problem is the reason it breaks in is because the titanium starts to wear away. It starts to leave deposits on the tang of the blade, and you wear away the titanium. And then eventually, it stops interfacing as tightly, and you get lock movement, lock rattle, and you send it in, and they got to fix it. So one way to deal with this is to do a steel lock bar insert. A lot of people do that, so then you got steel on steel. Another way, which is a very ingenious way, and what they're doing here, is to put something equally as hard, actually a little bit harder, into this lock face, the ceramic ball, the large ceramic ball that does the interfacing for you. That way you don't have any lock stick, and you're really not going to wear as much. Now, it's not perfect. The downside is you don't have a lot of contact space, so you run the risk of lock slippage. And I hear that there was a big problem, quote unquote big problem, with the Sebenza 31s kind of sliding, the lock slipping a little bit, and some people completely disengaging. Some people said it was the same with the Inkosi here. No issue. 100% rock solid on this one. I was surprised. I thought it would move a little because, give and take. I'm willing to let that happen a little bit. Let's check the birth date. I believe it was January of this year, 2022 is when this was made. So this is S45 VN steel drop point titanium handles. January 12th, 2022 is when this was born. And I have zero lock slip at all. I was actually surprised. I was expecting a little. Ceramic ball, lock face. I thought, yeah, if I push on it, it's going to slip a little bit. But nope, it did not. Now, here's another interesting thing about this knife that I don't think a lot of people know. This was somewhat of Chris Reeve's attempt at keeping up with the hard use folder arena. Believe it or not, that's what this was, to a certain degree. And mainly in the profiling. So this uses a very shallow hollow grind. It's almost a flat grind. The old Sebenzas, and I assume same with the new ones, have a pretty steep hollow grind, which makes them really good for slicing, but the edges are a little more delicate. They'll roll a little bit easier and things like that. And when this knife first came to inception, it was during the huge boom of overbuilt, super heavy duty knives. And this was kind of Chris Reeve's attempt at saying, hey, I'm attempting to make some changes to make my knife a little more heavy duty. I think he kind of said the lock face was a similar type thing, and I'm not sure. I want to say that the steel stock is a little bit thicker as well. Very subtle, right? Because that's what Chris Reeve does. He doesn't go jump in the deep end with these trends. He looks at them and says, is there any minor value to incorporating some of these things into my knives? And if there is, he does it in a small degree, and he didn't want to affect his main flagship knife, which is the Sebenza, so he launched the Inkosi instead to kind of fill that need. And now it's kind of just its own model. I would say it does seem a little weird to have this and the Sebenza. I would imagine this one has got to be phased out, right? Especially since they moved the Sebenza to this kind of lock interface. They're just too similar in my opinion. But I believe the double lugs come standard on the Inkosi, which I like. The double lugs is one of those things that I like it, but I don't really want to pay extra for it. So the fact that it just comes with it means cool. Even though I paid for it in the price of the knife, without having to make that choice, I just like having the double lugs. Side note, I'd prefer if they were silver. I don't really like the blue. I don't like how they wear, and I don't know, it's just kind of weird. So same thing everybody else says. Super smooth. There's just nothing else quite like it. I took this apart when I got it because the grease had dried up. I'm assuming that the previous owner has not changed out the grease since they bought it. And fluorinated grease, lithium grease, it actually dries up and gets kind of pasty and hard, kind of like dried up toothpaste. So you do have to replace it. It does not last forever. Even if you're not using the knife, it does kind of dry up. And when I got this, it wasn't as smooth as I wanted it to be. What I found surprising was the state of washers in Chris Reeve knives now are insane. Like, the last time I had a Chris Reeve knife is when they came out with the holes in it to hold the grease. And I was like, oh, that's a cool idea. Now, there's hardly any washer there at all. It's mostly giant voids. And then the washer is huge, and the washer is shaped and cut to fit in here, right? Which is cool, because that means you're going to have less side-to-side motion. Because the cheap way to do it is just to put in little tiny washers so that it doesn't bump into the stop and it doesn't cut into here. And then you just have these little tiny washers, and then you're going to get a little bit of side-to-side play because you're just not getting full leverage being sandwiched. So Chris Reeve custom machines all these washers in here. They are this shape of the handle, and then they've all got big voids to hold grease. So it just adds to the smoothness of this knife, which is razor sharp, by the way. So what else do I want to say on this? I did say I was going to go over specs and weight and things like that. I don't know. We'll do that quick. There's so many videos on this knife. I'm just trying to think, like, what is my kind of impression? A little bit longer than a Paramilitary 2, you can see right there. What is my impression of this knife after stepping away and kind of coming back and saying, oh yeah, Chris Reeve knives. I remember those. Those are a big deal. Kind of cool to revisit some of these designs. 4.9 ounces, really good weight. Everything's good. Ergonomics are good. Like I said, this was a bit of a shocker when I opened it up. I've gotten so used to big, beefy, overbuilt knives that this felt super delicate. Super delicate. Not anymore. Feels good. The ergos on this, I love the extra finger choil here that they put on the Inkosi. Feels so freaking good. Some people complain about this notch up here. I'm not sure if it serves a purpose, but it definitely doesn't get in the way. So I don't know why you'd complain. Also, got to give a big shout out to Chris Reeve's material they send. They give you tools to take it apart. They give you grease. They give you Loctite. Still give you this crappy lanyard, though, that the previous owner cut off, and I would have done the same if it was still on there. It does not look good. Microfiber cloth. You already saw the information, born on date, materials. It's got disassembly instructions now. Really, really awesome. So Chris Reeve Knives, they just do all that stuff so well. Elegant, timeless design. This thing is never going to look dated. Does not look dated at all. This is the same Inkosi that I had. I think I had an Inkosi back 8, 9 years ago. And it's, for the most part, unchanged. I mean, the washers have changed. But for the most part, the profile, the silhouette is the exact same, and it looks just as good as it did then. It's just beautiful. It's a beautiful freaking knife. And I figure I've got to have at least one Chris Reeve in my collection, and this is the one that I chose. I'm super happy about it. So, a few thoughts on Chris Reeve knives in general. Also the Inkosi. Beautiful knife. All right, guys, I'm out of here. Please subscribe, like, all that jazz. Leave some comments. What do you think of Chris Reeve? What do you think of the Inkosi? What's your favorite Chris Reeve knife? Do you have this knife? Do you like it? And also, do you have any issues with lock slip? Because I have none on this, and I'm really happy about that. So, all right, guys, catch you later.